Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2 of the new FX series, The Old Man, starring Jeff Bridges and John Lithgow. So, these first two episodes were directed by John Watts, who some of you may know as the director of all three of the, what's his name? Tom Holland, all three of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. He directed these first two episodes. I can assure you these first two episodes, if you've seen them, not the same tone as the Spider-Man movies, but still, they brought in a very good director for these first two episodes. So what I want to do is I'm going to talk about these first two episodes collectively in very leaning toward no spoilers at all, but maybe very mild spoilers. I'm going to talk about those two episodes. But before I get into that, I kind of want to talk about how I want to handle this show going forward, because I'm not entirely sure if it's something I'm going to cover week to week. It kind of depends on how the schedule lays out. I've been kind of off for maybe like the past 3 weeks or so. I've only been doing episodes covering The Boys, but I'm going to get back into the swing of things, pumping out content 4 or 5 days out of the week. And I'm trying to balance what I want to cover and what I don't want to cover. And I know I've got a few things coming up that I'm going to drop videos for probably over the course of this week, for things that I just watched in its entirety, but I never covered episode by episode because either it was already completed before I got to watching it, or it was something that came out all at one time, and I can't watch 7 episodes of Stranger Things in a weekend and get a video up with all the other stuff I do. So, I've got stuff like that coming, 1883 video, Stranger Things, Time Traveler's Wife. There's, I think, a couple other hacks that I'm going to do videos for. I'm just going to talk about those seasons as a whole. So that's going to come. And then, Westworld starts on Sunday. I'll be covering that week to week for sure. And there's a few other things. So I'll see how this fits into the schedule. But I think more than likely I'll be covering this. So this show, as far as we know anyway, because there's a whole lot that is intentionally left in the dark in these first two episodes. A whole lot of stuff that happened in the past of the main characters that we don't know yet. So there's kind of like not a lot to go on as far as what I can expect going forward in this show from that perspective. But this is clearly one that's going to, bleed a little bit of background information into every episode to get you a little bit more enlightened on why the characters are doing what they're doing present day. But right now, it seems like it's kind of your basic generic kind of thriller. What's going to set this show apart is the acting performances of the two main leads. I take that back, the 3 main leads, because they got 3 great actors to star in this show. You got Jeff Bridges, you got John Lithgow, and you got, oh my goodness, Amy Brennaman. So, I'm going to talk about the premise of the show, and I'm going to get into some of the things that I liked or didn't like or whatever about the show. So, as far as we know right now, the premise is that Dan Chase, who's played by Jeff Bridges, is a former CIA agent who I think we're supposed to believe almost kind of like worked with a terrorist, or kind of like converted into like working with this terrorist. We don't know too much about it, but it's this guy named Faraz Hamzat, and we don't know too much about him either. We just know that he was like a warlord, and we see like a flashback scene of Jeff Bridges' character younger, and he's kind of like talking to John Lithgow's character younger, and essentially he's saying like, this Hamzat guy, he ain't all that bad. Like, everybody think he's bad, but he's not. And Lithgow's character, whose name is Harold Harper, the two H's kind of throw me off. Sometimes I want to call it Harper Harold, or I don't know. It's tough for me to remember his full name. My notes all say Harper, but that's like a first name, whatever. But young Harper is kind of like, so you mean to tell me that all of our intelligence and everything we know about this guy is wrong, and you and only you are correct? And he's like, yeah, pretty much. But from the perspective of everyone else, he being Chase, worked with this warlord terrorist guy, and somehow Harper allowed this to happen, or had some sort of affiliation with this happening, which we know he did, but we just don't know in what capacity. Harper, in present day, played by John Lithgow, he lives with his grandson, and we find out that a few weeks prior to present day, something happened to his son and daughter-in-law, and they're both dead. We don't know what happened yet, but I feel like that's going to play a big part as well. And for whatever reason, Chase has been able to live under the radar for 30 years. This Hamzat guy apparently got it in his mind, and we're led to believe that he has spent the last 30 years kind of like mining resources and developing the ability to get revenge on Chase, because apparently Chase betrayed him at some point in some way, which we don't know about. So we're still very unclear on the motivations behind why, after 30 years of inaction, for some reason, the current U.S. government wants to capture Chase and presumably give him over to Hamzat. We still don't know why, but apparently whatever happened, and now they're out to get him. He's woken up literally by this realization, and he has to kind of go on the run. Harper is now, I guess was at the time still, I guess, off work, grieving over the loss of his son and daughter-in-law, but because of his personal ties to Chase, he's brought back in. And now he's kind of leading the manhunt for Chase. And that's kind of where we stand. Amy Brennaman's character is named Zoe. She's looped in because he ends up renting out like a guest house at someone's house, who I think he got through one of his connects. When I'm not entirely clear on that. We hear him call somebody and say to set up a house for him. But then when he shows up, he's at like the guest house for Amy Brennaman's character, who is a fairly recent divorcee. And they start to develop a kind of a relationship, which is kind of weird because when I saw Amy Brennaman was going to be in it, I assumed she was going to be his daughter. So like Chase talks to his daughter throughout these first 2 episodes on the phone. And I figured Amy Brennaman was going to be her. But then they start developing this kind of relationship. And I'm thinking like, man, he looks like he's old enough to be her father. I looked up the ages. They're only 15 years separated in age. He's about, I want to say like 73 and she's like 58, something in that range. But that was weird for me because I thought for sure she was going to be the daughter. But he also has Chase. He also has a wife who passed probably about 5 years ago. So he's a widow. He's got, or a widower. I can't remember which one is supposed to be the man. I think widower is the man. She developed dementia, had that really bad for, I think he said 6 years or something like that. And then she died from Huntington's disease, which I'm not entirely sure what that is, but I'm assuming it's some sort of byproduct of having dementia. And there's something going on there where he's kind of like haunted by his wife's memory. And we see a flashback of them kind of like deciding to stop running from whatever it is that he did, which we still don't know. We flashback to them kind of deciding to stop running, taking up new identities and setting up shop and trying to build a family together. So I think he harbors a lot of resentment toward himself for essentially, I don't want to say forcing her because she went willingly, but like coercing her into settling in with him in this life. And I think he harbors a lot of guilt over her demise because we see her in these dream sequences really chastising him about what he'd done and what he'd done to her. Interestingly enough, his wife is played by, I'm gonna hopefully not butcher her name, Hayam Abbas. She plays Marsha Roy on Succession, and she looks unrecognizable to me. Like they do her up to look really like rich and sophisticated, and so on this, she's just walking around looking like a ghost in a nightgown. I'm like, I was just happened to be looking at the casting and I saw that. I was like, wow, I didn't even recognize her. But that's generally the premise. And it's a very simple premise, but the show is carried by these performances by these 3 incredible actors. Bridges, it's just Bridges and Lithgow are so effortlessly great. Like it's so interesting to see how easily they become someone else, and they become someone else in a captivating way. Like even though Bridges is playing the old man, you still can't help but be enthralled by everything that he's saying. Example, there's a situation where he starts to tell this story, and he tells a story about this old man who didn't like to communicate verbally because he thought there was a lot of deception in verbal communication. So he didn't talk much, and he felt like he would communicate through his actions. And one of the things that he did to show people he cared is that he would cook for them. And he's telling this story. He's starting to tell this story. I'm like, oh man, that's an old man telling an old man story. But as he gets into the story, you find yourself being engrossed in it just from how he's telling it. And it becomes an interesting story because he's using it as a ploy to kind of warm up to her because she had told him that he couldn't stay there because he has these dogs. And the dogs, I said this is going to be non-spoilery, so I'm not going to talk about the dogs too much, but the dogs are like, like I talked about the 3 great actors, like the dogs are like right below that as far as like their greatness in this show. But she didn't want to have the dogs there because her ex-husband actually owns the place and apparently he's a piece of shit. So she doesn't want the dogs to do anything that he can blame her for. But, he tells this story about this old man who cooks for people to to show them affection or to show how much he cares or gratitude or whatever. And it's clear, very clearly working. And she even says at some point like that her mom used to make her eggs, and he makes her eggs later again as well. I think he made her eggs in this meal, and then he makes her eggs again at the end of episode 2. And it just made me wonder if I believe he made eggs in the first time. I'm not 100% sure, but it just made me wonder if he had some kind of knowledge of that already. That he knew that he could win her over by making eggs. Because, I mean, he's an ex-CIA guy. He probably knows all kinds of stuff. And we're meant to believe this is a chance encounter. But I wouldn't be surprised if he, I don't want to say targeted her, but maybe he knows her ex-husband or something like that. And he knew what, I don't want to say buttons to push, but he knew how he could manipulate her into letting him stay there. But that's who she is. And yeah, these three carry this show big time. Lithgow's great so far. Brennaman's great so far. I'm really enjoying their performances, which are just really elevating the show beyond just like, okay, this is another, standard thriller, which it kind of is so far. I haven't seen anything really too much special about it, which is why I'm like wavering on whether or not I want to cover it every week. But once we start digging deep into some of these episodes and talking about some of the stuff that we're seeing, it might become more clear for me if it's something that I want to continue to cover week to week. So we'll see. But I want to talk about a couple more things about the show before I wrap up. One thing that I didn't like, but then it kind of worked at one point, is, and I've been seeing this as a problem. Like, this is now a routine. Like, this is something I'm consistently seeing now, is with scenes that are too dark. And too dark to where you can't see anything that's going on, even if you are yourself sitting in the dark. I think the first most well-known occurrence of this was the Long Night episode for Game of Thrones in the final season. That had a portion where it was so dark you couldn't really tell what was going on. I had this problem with Outer Range. There was something else too where it was just like anytime it was dark, I'm like, okay, I can't even see what's going on. Like, it could still be dark outside and you could still like characters in certain ways. We can be like, okay, that could be like moonlight from outside or something like that. But they just have these scenes so pitch black, and it really takes me out of an episode if I'm supposed to be experiencing a very intense scene and I can't tell what's going on. So I'm just sitting there like, well, shit, since I don't know what's going on, well, fuck it. I don't care what's happening. And they gotta do something with that. And when I say they, I don't mean the people on this show, because this is already done. But whatever it is that somehow has made it a trend to have like these really overly dark night scenes where you can't see anything, that's got to stop. There's something else that's like that too, a fourth thing, but I'm not recalling. But when I said it kind of works, there was the scene where this was the worst. The little bit of light I saw on the screen held something that made me go, oh shit, what is that? So like, if there were more light in that scene, I might not have noticed that. So like, it kind of worked, but it's a thing, especially in that first episode, man. There's so many moments where I'm just like, I can't see what the fuck's going on. On the plus side, there is great fight choreography on this show. And I say great, I'm not talking about like Jet Li type shit, but I'm talking about like real close quarters, hand-to-hand combat between two trained CIA people, but one is young and not as good as the guy who's now old. So there's like a balance in this fight scene where it's like, that if Jeff Bridges' character were younger, this guy would have got done with real quick. But like, I love the realness of it. Like, it felt like a scene between a guy that's like clearly more skilled but just old. So it's like there's an even battle there, and they draw. I don't want to say they draw this out because it makes it sound like I didn't like it, but this scene goes on for quite a while, and it moves to different locations where these two kind of end up fighting and going at it, and it was really great work. I look forward to seeing a lot more of that. But I also need it to be realistic. I don't want to see 73-year-old Jeff Bridges out here hopping around and doing karate kicks and shit like that. He's not. I'm pretty sure they're going to be true to how much hand-to-hand combat a 73-year-old man can do, but I think I'd rather see him get some weapons, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, really great fight choreography in that first episode. There's another character named Raymond Waters, who works for the CIA, and this guy is going to be that guy who you hate throughout the season because he's just an asshole. And the thing that's wrong with this guy, everything he says is right. He's reading everything that he's seeing accurately. His problem is that as soon as he comes in a room, he starts accusing people of shit. And it's just not going to work. Like, you're new to this whole scene, and he immediately is questioning Lithgow's character, Harold Harper. I almost wanted to call him Harold when his last name's Harper. He's questioning Harper like, yeah, how come Chase left right before we got there and you were just on the phone out there? Like, that's like, you come in immediately accusing him of colluding with the guy you're trying to catch. Like, who does that? And the problem is that he's right. That is what was happening. But like, you just don't introduce yourself in that way. And he does this multiple times in these 3 episodes where he walks into a room and he just immediately starts accusing people of being shady. And it's just like, he's so unlikable, even though everything he says is right. I don't know how I'm going to feel about this guy. I already talked about the communicating through the food scene. I thought that was a great scene. Amy Brennaman, I had her to talk about, but I already talked about her as well. I like what they're doing with her as Zoe. The idea of her now being tied to him as someone he might have to protect, just like the whole idea of him right now trying to stay alive as he wants to protect his daughter in case they, because Lithgow's character says straight up, like, if I gotta come after you, I'm gonna try to use the daughter to get to you. He doesn't know who or where the daughter is, but that is his plan. So with Chase knowing that, he's trying to move in a way that can make sure that he keeps his daughter safe. But now he might have to actually protect Zoe, Amy Brennaman's character, as well. So if she ends up kind of like tag teaming along with him on these adventures, that could be pretty intriguing as well. So all that to say, these first 2 episodes, like I said, there's a fairly standard thriller, but it's elevated by the performances. So I encourage you guys to check it out. Whether I cover it every week or not, I'm definitely going to be watching it. So we'll see what happens. I'll definitely come back here for episode 3. We'll kind of like do a deep dive into that one, talk about it a little bit more, little bit more detail, and we'll kind of get an idea of, based on how I'm feeling after that, how this video does numbers wise, how I'm going to continue the rest of the season. So till next week, peace.